Schwabish.
Good morning. That'll be an interesting font today. My name is John Schwabish. Thanks for having me. I'm an economist by training. For the last 9 years, I have worked at the Congressional Budget Office. And most of my research has been in the areas of Social Security. I helped run a large micro-simulation model. We projected Social Security finances, Medicare finances, Medicaid finances, and other sorts of things. I also worked in areas of immigration, food stamps, disability insurance, so on and so forth. And a couple years ago, I started leading the data visualization efforts at the agency. We started creating infographics, what we called CBO snapshots, small one-off charts, and we improved, of course, the graphics in our regular publications. But last week was my last week at CBO, and next week I start a new role at the Urban Institute, where I'll be splitting my time continuing a lot of that research, but also spending about half my time in the communication department, so you have caught me on my 2-week vacation. That's okay. It's a lovely day to be inside. I also have two websites. My first website is what I call policyviz.com, where I blog and write a lot about data visualization, especially as it relates to social sciences. It also is sort of the platform for my workshops and trainings that I do in data visualization and presentation techniques. And I also have what I call a project site called Help Me Viz. And the purpose of the site is to allow anyone from computer scientists all the way down to your lowly analyst at government agency ABC to post visualizations that they're looking for feedback on or are struggling with, and to solicit feedback from the larger data visualization community. In my experience, I think there's a lot of criticism and critique out there that's meant to be positive, but it shows up via Twitter, via comments on websites, and there's not a lot of back and forth, and there's not a lot of constructive outcomes from that. So that project site's been online for about 4 months. So a couple of challenges that I see as they relate to how social scientists can communicate information, in particular to policymakers. The first challenge I see is scale comparisons. So we see a lot of things like this, where we take trillions of dollars and we stack it or we lay it end to end, and we say that it reaches from here to the moon, as if that has any meaning to any of us. Or we stack it in big towers and it's twice as big as the Empire State Building, as if that's meaningful to any of us. You stand next to the Empire State Building and it's just a big tall building. You have $10 trillion and it's 2 Empire State Buildings, it's 2 really tall buildings. Or you have 3,000 canisters that hold radioactive waste, and that's equal to 24 Empire State Buildings. That's 24 very large buildings. Or you have something like the New York Times does, where they take the luge course from the Winter Olympics and they put it in Times Square. Something that I might be able to sort of be more familiar with because I've stood in Times Square, and that's a sort of familiar comparison. So if you can imagine things like $900 billion in Social Security spending last year, how do we make that number familiar to people? How do we get policymakers to understand that and be familiar with those sorts of numbers? The other sort of challenge that I try to focus on is basic data visualization techniques when it comes to social scientists, in particular economists. So you'll see things like this in basic journal articles. Here the authors are plotting coefficient estimates from a regression of unemployment rate and food stamp participation. And of course, you get almost nothing out of this big dark zero-axis line, which doesn't really help you much. Acronyms W, E, and SS, which most of us would think you'd put the definition right in the chart, but it's not. It's 15 pages earlier, which is very nice. So I try to show people how to declutter things, clean things up, that sort of thing. This is what I call a nice clutter plot from one of the leading economics journals. You take this sort of chart and you show someone, well, what if you just get rid of the labels and you emphasize the data, you show the data, their eyes sort of light up. So those are the sort of challenges that I'm dealing with in the economics sphere and in the policy sphere. In terms of a wish list, I'm trying to move into the research area of some of these information visualization area. And one of the frustrations that I see in this particular area is the number of observations in these experiments. So I've been to VizWeek a couple of times, and the researchers get up there and say, we have this experiment, we're going to look at pie charts or whatever, we have 6 undergraduates who were, smoking up in the bathroom, and now they're going to do our experiment. I'd really like to see us try to increase the sample size. I'm always shocked when people say we have 6 people, and here are standard errors, as if standard errors on an N of 6 has any meaning. Natalie mentioned this storytelling, let's call it a storytelling phenomenon. There's a lot of emphasis on storytelling, especially these new news efforts are underway with Vox and the new 538 and the upshot at the New York Times and what the Washington Post is about to launch. There's a real effort in the social science area to look into the storytelling. How do we talk about our research in economics, in Social Security, in food stamps, and how do we get people to relate to that? How do we tell those stories in a way, both with text and visually, so that people can connect with that more easily? And finally, something Natalie mentioned and Ken also mentioned, no problem, is to try to integrate visualization into the research method itself. A lot of people, there's a great economic historian at the University of Illinois Chicago talking about how we shouldn't write and do our research as two separate things, that we should integrate the two. But the piece that's missing is the visualization, that those three things need to come together, and that in exploring our data and working with our data, researchers should be using these sorts of tools together. And so one of the challenges I have is just showing people the different tools that are out there, Tableau, Spotfire, a lot of the tools that are on Ben Schneiderman's team is doing, and how to use those tools. So those are the sorts of challenges that I see, and I'm looking forward to work to come. So thanks. All right.